I think it's just John, Janelle.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, is everybody ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Trustee emergency meeting to order on Tuesday, April 7th, Election Day, of course, in Wisconsin. Amazing how that came about. Anyway, would you please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States.
the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Lino,
Here.
Baker,
Here.
Bertle. Here. Bell,
Here.
Duffy,
Here.
Peduncle,
Here.
and Zoshki.
Here.
Then I also show that Bud Combs and John Lowry from the town of Liberty Grove are here. Louise Housen is here. Jay Kita is here. Miles is not, is that correct?
No Miles.
Okay. Stephen Torrey, Trish,
285
Amy,
545.
Jim
So
S.
type that.
Yeah.
Yeah. 285 pound.
Okay, approval of the agenda as published.
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Approval of the minutes as published. Sets of minutes. March 24th set of minutes first. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make that motion, Dave.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any changes, additions, deletions?
There's two sets of minutes.
Yes, I know, we're talking March 24th now.
Okay. And I'm sorry, who seconded it?
I did. Scott.
Got-
Okay, Scott made it and who seconded it?
Duffy.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Then for the minutes on Tuesday, March 31st.
So
I'll
moved.
make that motion.
All right, I'll second.
Any changes or additions, deletions? If not, all in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to new village board business items. Number 1, discussion regarding an update on the village response to COVID-19 pandemic. Consider a motion for action if necessary. I'll start in a moment. The update for today via the county public health department and the emergency operations center was basically we have increased now up to 7 positive results. They are expected to probably overnight. And just so everybody doesn't get confused with the numbers that are being sent around all the time, the county reports their numbers as of 4 o'clock every day, which is when the state health department releases all the final numbers. Occasionally, shortly thereafter, by fax, the lab in Madison that is doing the test will send positive tests after that 4 o'clock cutoff. So you'll hear on the news that maybe there's a different number than what was reported at 4. That's because they've gotten the latest information off the fax. But the public health department is just going to report every day at 4 o'clock what the numbers were. So the number for the moment is 7. I have not heard any update since then. We continue to get questions about what's going to happen with certain businesses. I know that Louise has been working with a lot of that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We have asked clarification on some of the essential versus non-essential things that are going on in the state. We're waiting for clarification back on that. There's not a lot of other updates other than that the health department is comfortable that obviously there's more cases floating around Door County than what have been reported. And there also is the hospital remains in pretty good shape. They're not getting crowded or overtaxed at this point in time. They are staffed for all the equipment and the updated isolation units that they put in place with the equipment they have appropriate staff for at this moment in time. So they're all set to go as things start to change. It was reiterated today on the all call this morning that they're still looking for the peak to be somewhere around the third week of April, extending into early May. So again, those same numbers of like April 26th through May 5th are the numbers that are kind of floating yet. And that's based on, that can change daily, but it's been pretty consistent the last week. And that's based on what they're seeing around the state for the numbers. That's the only update I have as far as anything from public health. So if anybody has any questions, now would be the time to ask that. Otherwise, we'll start going around and talking to all of our attendees. No? Okay.
Is there anything that's come out yet as to whether there's going to be an extension of Safer at Home?
No, they're not going to make that decision until April 24th, which is when the current one expires. But you have to pretty well figure if the peak is going to be around April 26th, they're probably going to extend it because you're going to end up well after that at the peak before it drops down.
Yeah.
So I would think, based on what I see, and what I'm hearing, I would expect that it'll be extended. We'll have to wait. I mean, that's 2 weeks away. So it pretty well look like it'd have to be extended.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's start with Jay.
Yes. Well, we're still giving her at the pig, so we do have a lot more call-ins. You know, we're working good with the scan, doing really well with them. The call-ins, like I said, you know, the last 2 days, we've probably shopped for about 50 people a day. So, I mean, that's going pretty good. In the store, we got floor decals all over. We tried to have, so they go one way up and down. It's my employees that's having a hard time following the arrow signs. So we'll hopefully get that. Also today we did implement all employees in the store to wear a mask. So it's tough to get used to. It's going to take a few days to get used to, but otherwise they're doing a great job. So we are looking at implementing also in our deli where we're going to pretty much go to all packaged foods, like our salads and meats and all that, just to be packaged up in that to feel safer there so we don't get people crowding around the deli area. But otherwise, you know, it hasn't been that bad. It has slowed down, you know, a little bit. So it's kind of nice, and people are, you know, taking precautions not to try to get 6 feet. The only bad thing is I just wish that more people would wear masks in the store because there's a lot of people that come in the store that do not wear masks yet. So, you know, that's something that we'll look at. We'll put on Facebook. You know, I'm planning on putting on Facebook thing that, you know, please one person from a family in the store at once. And, you know, we try to keep the kids out because you just don't, you know, if dire need that, you know, you don't have a babysitter or something, you can bring your child in. But I just think we need to think here a little bit and make sure that you bring your child in. You got to kind of watch it because kids like to touch everything. So, I mean, it's you know, it's tough to have that, but all in all, I think my staff, they're doing a heck of a job, and we're trying to keep everything wiped down and cleaned, and it seems to be working good.
Okay, great. So you are seeing a downturn in the number of people coming in the store?
Yes, and an upturn for shopping for people. So,
Well, that's
so I
good.
mean, it's pretty good. So
Good to hear. Okay. Let's go to Miles. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a long day of keeping up with the election stuff and questions that have come into the Pulse, but I did stop by Sister Bay this morning just to take a look at the drive-through voting stuff, and I've seen a lot of comments online that people said it worked great. So, and that applauded the village for putting that together. Other than that, we're still chugging along at the Pulse. I know there was a talk last week about what the village can do to help us. I think right now we're hopeful, pretty confident that we'll be able to get one of the payroll loans. So as much as we really love the village even discussing that right now, I don't think it's we're hoping that we can work with the bank and be able to continue and get through this stretch and come out the other side. And we've gotten a lot of outpouring from folks in the community who have more so than ever before, more positive feedback, which is obviously nice to get. So we're going to continue doing what we're doing each week, and always open to more feedback about what information needs to get out there to people, whether it be from UJ or from the village. So that's where we're at. I don't know if anyone has any suggestions or questions or information that we should be including that we haven't. We're trying to touch on as many aspects as we possibly can on how this is impacting people.
Okay. Any questions for Miles?
I've got none.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Miles. We appreciate everything you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Let's go to Louise.
Okay, so right now, in terms of the current status of village businesses, a couple of businesses have opened. Jerry's opened, and Joy said she's had a great couple of weeks. She's trying to manage all the calls she's getting because everybody wants soil and plants. They want to go outside and start working in the yard. So she's struggling with trying to figure that out. So Nate, her son, is trying to put something together, a message on Facebook so they can do curbside pickup. So she's trying to figure that out. But she sold out of all of her cut flowers. She sold all of her lilies for Easter, which is really the community's, giving her lots of support. Now she's trying to figure out how to, because she's got lots of inventory, she's trying to figure out how to help, how to manage curbside pickup for, peat moss and soil and, flats, because it's all there. So I will try to, we're going to try to help her figure it out, especially from a messaging perspective. And then we also worked with, I think it was 2 meetings ago when the, oh God, I forget his name. The guy that's put together the meals program was at the meeting. So we've been in touch with him, and they now have, you probably know this, but they now have a link where you can contribute directly to that program. It's also on the, so he sent us the link and we posted that for them. So that, because in the past it was a little bit more confusing when you went on the Community Funds website.
Louise, do you know
Yeah.
if they were able to get Northern Door Kitchen?
I don't know. I know they were still working on it because Lars called me and said that he and Freddie were going up to talk to, we're going over to look at the kitchen at NWTC because they were also thinking about maybe doing the kitchen offering the kitchen at Al's. I don't know.
Okay.
I could find out, but I don't know. And that was late last week.
Okay.
I'm not sure. But anyway, businesses that have decided to stay open are still open. Lars mentioned that they may wind up opening a little later. JJ's is not open yet. Not sure when he will be because he's not really set up for takeout, so he doesn't know. So we're now moving into reaching out to businesses that would be likely to open in May to see what they're thinking. We've not had many calls about it, Jess Grassy called me wondering, not called me, sorry, emailed and wondered about it. And that was 2 weeks ago, which is like a lifetime ago. So we'll start reaching out to them. We have been speaking to lodging. And for the most part, nobody has any reservations for the month of April. May is really lean. A few are starting to get cancellations for June and July, but I can't say that it's like, this giant rush to cancel because we're not seeing that. It feels like a lot of our businesses have applied for the PPP loans or the EIDL loans and are getting help from their lenders and or figuring out how to do it themselves. I will say the DCEDC has been an enormous help. And in talking to Tom Strong there, he's told me that many Sister Bay businesses have reached out. So I think that our business community, if they needed help, are calling the right people to get that help. And the feedback I've received is people that applied for PPP, their lenders have told them that they've gotten a loan number, but no specific date as to when the loan number means, okay, probably going to get the loan. No specific dates for when. And anything I've read anywhere online or any financial, it looks to be 3 to 4 weeks, but I don't know if anybody knows, to tell you the truth. But it's good that they're at least taking advantage of it. As far as J1s go, I think everybody knows that the State Department has not updated their hold, which is now May 15th. And the two agencies that most of the businesses use have not really heard much from them. Fuzzy told me that a couple of the people that he works with on a regular basis did go and get visas. So they were given visas. It's whether or not the State Department, raises the hold. And if that window gets really short, so they're down, now they're not coming till July. His feeling was a lot of those kids wouldn't come because now they're not here for very long, and they like to tour a little bit at the end of their stay, and then but they got to be back at school. So that's what's going on there, and we're working on getting the 2020 brochure out. It'll be ready in a couple of weeks, and it'll be business as usual with that. And we've moved into Casperson's, kind of. We have to clean the carpet. We put 2 new windows. We got to paint around the windows. And
Any weird sounds in the middle of the night?
no, I'm not. I've already said I am not going to stay there after dark. Period. Because all the guys keep telling me these stories, and it just scares the anyway. I'm not going to stay there after dark. But I don't have to worry about that till like winter. So in winter, it's a little scary. I'm not doing it. But so yeah, we're excited. And so we'll decide about opening up the old schoolhouse. Normally we would do that just before Memorial Day. Depending on what's happening, maybe we don't open the schoolhouse until a little bit later and we all work down there. There's plenty of room. So we'll figure that out. The coordinators meet every Wednesday and we talk about festivals and events. Right now, I think they're all canceled through the month of May, and we're starting to work on June. I'm not aware of any in June. I'm not aware of any that have been canceled, county-wide yet. A few have been postponed, so some people are postponing. So it looks like fall might get a little crowded, but I think people up here are pretty respectful and, not planning on stepping on anybody else's stuff. I'm happy to report I have had a conversation with the Easter Bunny, and it's possible, even though he can't make, deliveries to homes or be here for the egg hunt, which is very disappointing for him, that he may make a few appearances around the village this weekend. But he's not sure because he's pretty busy. But if he comes to Door County, I can tell you he will be in Sister Bay. So that's all I got for you. Otherwise, everybody's pretty good.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Louise?
I've got a question, Dave. It's Rob.
Sure.
Louise, when you said May lodging business is quote unquote lean, does that mean there's been cancellations that people have reported to you, which has left the current reservations lean?
Yeah.
Does it mean that there's been people open and actively trying to take reservations for May, but that just a few are coming in? What does that exactly mean when you say it's lean?
It means that people are getting cancellations for May.
Has anybody reported any tracking to you on that as far as
No,
what % of reservations they had for May have canceled?
absolutely not. No, and I don't ask. We really don't ask. We pretty much, we just kind of try to get a temperature check of what's going on. And it's not, it's not horrible. I mean, May's 5% of our total year's room tax. So, I mean, that's, if you spread that amongst all of our lodging folks and things, you have a bad May, it's a number that you can figure out, right? So you get a little bit later in the season, it's a little tougher to make those numbers up. So I'm not hearing that at all. And I've had conversations with people about the bridal business. I mean, I don't have to remind you, somebody opened a brand new bridal business and hasn't had a single wedding yet, right?
Mhm.
Nothing in that building yet. So Sarah's hanging in there. She hasn't had any cancellations. I talked to Jess Ranke over at over in Egg Harbor. She manages the Crest. Same thing with them. So there's some postponing, there's moving around, there's downsizing and things like that. So I think people are really hopeful, honestly, really hopeful. And I think, a bride in particular, so, and I think that also up here, we have a lot of people that come up here and go to lodging places, not once, but several times during the season, sometimes 2 or 3 times. So maybe they'll take a reservation and move it out, so then that lodging place doesn't lose a deposit, which is really the biggest concern for a lot of our lodging folks now. So I'm not hearing, anything like, oh my gosh, yet, not at all.
And Louise and I had spoken earlier today. I had spoken with a couple of hoteliers between yesterday and this morning also. And what I got, because I was asking similar questions, and what I got back was they were getting cancellations for May, understanding that things probably weren't going to be open much given what was going on.
Yeah.
And they were starting to get them into June and July somewhat. And we were talking about that may have more to do with if you're losing your job or you don't think financially you're going to be good as a result of what's going on, you're probably now would be the time to rethink and pull back on some of those things. So some of that may be happening also.
Right.
So of course, that's a great concern.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think there's going to be this lingering effect that you're going into a room that was occupied by somebody you don't know where they were, what they had, and are you going to be more apprehensive to do that in public? And that will be the case not only in restaurants but in hotels and vacation rentals. There's going to be uncertainty that's going to weigh on people for this whole year, at some level, and there's no way around it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
But, yeah, our businesses have been amazing. They're great. It's just a terrific, unbelievable group and what they've done to help out each other in the community. We should be really proud.
Yes, definitely. And I want to mention, while I think of it, with Miles still on the line, last week, the Friday Pulse, he had mentioned that when visitors come here, even though we're asking them not to come, we have to make sure that we are still welcoming and that they are still part of the community. We're just asking them to make sure that they isolate and bring things with them so they can, in fact, self-isolate when they're here. We're concerned about some of the things that we hear going on around Door County, people being confronted in parking lots and things like that when they see out-of-state plates. And at any given moment in time, we don't know what somebody's situation is as to why they're actually here. We have to leave that up to them, and hopefully that they are maintaining the requirements for both the state order and what CDC is asking. But when they're here, we should not shun them. We should not detract them. We should not insult them. We should support them. They are our friends and neighbors other times of the year. And we just need to be careful that we don't get people overreacting when people are up here. So, I was glad to see you publish that, Miles, by the way.
And the chatter on Door County visitors and Door County residents or Door County vacationers, I mean, Miles, you probably look at that as well. It really hasn't been negative. I think it's for the most part been pretty good.
Yeah, I know that we've gotten some emails from people who, some of that very vitriolic stuff from locals, but then we also, there was a lot of response to what I wrote that people said, yeah, I've been feeling the same. Sounds like a lot of people are sort of like seeing that and being put off by it. So it does seem like a lot more people are like, hey, let's tone it down, because there has just been some nastiness, especially on social media, that I just don't think we probably need to go that far. We're doing a good job of saying stay home as best you can. Yeah. But yeah, we risk going over that edge and tarnishing a reputation that is taking decades to build. So it's a fine line.
Yes.
There is a lot of people that are calling in their orders that are telling me flat out that they are self-quarantining for like 14 to 21 days. So, I mean, that's where a lot of them are coming from. So I think they're doing the right thing.
Okay.
So.
Good.
It's good to hear. Great. Any other questions of Louise? Okay. If not, we'll go to John. Are you online, John Lowry?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Anything to add for this evening or anything you'd like to say?
Not now. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Bud has a question.
Go ahead, Bud. Sorry.
Jay, you mentioned you wish more people were wearing masks in the store. What about gloves?
Gloves, I've had so many conversations with different doctors and different health professionals, and gloves don't work that well for our workers for the simple reason you're going through the checkout line, and it's better for them to take a squirt of hand stuff and use it instead of using the gloves, because a lot of doctors pretty much told me flat out, you're just hiding it with gloves. So you're better off to use hand sanitizer and wipe it down. And we've been wiping down in between every transaction too, as much as we can. So there's a mixed feeling with gloves, and I'm still mixed up about it too. Our checkers and that have a choice of that. And a lot of people, when they come in, we offer the gloves when they walk in, and mostly everybody's taking them if they don't have their own. So, I mean, they're being conscientious about that, but for staff and that to wear them, like a lot of doctors and nurses that have come through our lines have pretty much said that you're just hiding the situation and not really doing the right thing.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they would like to add or ask about COVID-19 in Northern Door County? I'm sorry, Chris couldn't be with us. I'd like to have gotten that update, but we will talk to him soon. Okay, we'll close out that discussion item, move to the next one. Discussion regarding the possibility of the village providing some type of financial support to the Door County Emergency Support Coalition, Peninsula Pulse, and Door County Meals Cooperative Program, as all those organizations currently provide valuable services to the citizens of the village at no cost. And for everybody that doesn't want to stick around for the board meeting, thank you for logging on and being with us, but you are, of course, more than welcome to finish as we go through a couple of items. So.
Dave?
Yes.
If I can, I would like to congratulate you and your board and the attendees at these meetings for taking the lead on this battle that we're facing. You're to be commended highly. Thank you.
Well, thank you, John. We appreciate that. We will all get through this together.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Bo momentarily.
Okay, so we're both here on the screen, but I'll be talking. Okay, so just jumping into agenda item number 2. This is something that was brought up last week about the possibility of providing some funds to the Emergency Coalition and the Pulse. And I think Miles kind of touched base earlier in discussing that, you've gone out for the loan at this time, so you don't know if funds are needed, so we can maybe hold off on that discussion until you hear something otherwise from that loan side. Tasha is here from our finance department too, if we want to discuss trying to figure out any particular number or anything you feel the village should contribute for that meals coalition that we had that Adam from the last meeting in here on. So if anyone has any input on that, feel free. And also the coalition. Yeah, and the coalition as well.
Does anybody have a feeling on it one way or another?
I feel like it would be great to do something. know what and how much we can do, and there's obviously limits that we have to be concerned with. So I don't necessarily know if I feel comfortable throwing out any kind of number, having never kind of done something like this before for somebody. But maybe I'll look for you, Tasha, to give us a little parameter on what you think, or what anybody else thinks. If somebody has a number in mind, I don't personally. Doing something would be great.
I don't know what kind of parameter to provide, honestly. I've not seen any kind of cost basis for any of this, so I don't even know what to throw out there would be even reasonable at this point.
Yeah, this is a tricky one. I know this community has never taken a part of anything to this nature. So maybe I can have a conversation with Adam and see where they're at and what they need. And then maybe after that discussion, we can get a better idea of, what kind of support they would be looking for. It seemed like they were just looking for some financials to keep the overhead. So we can talk to them. It might just be a small number that we can donate one time that might help them get through this time. And then, if this continues on for a couple more months and they're still struggling, we can, reevaluate and discuss based on their needs.
I think something we need to be aware of is that if we do something, others are likely to follow.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that if we can do something sooner than later, we're going to give people a chance to do things in the subsequent weeks.
Yeah, I agree. So I'd be more than happy to have that conversation with Adam, just to get a temperature of what they're facing and what's going on.
I think what Nate's saying is maybe we should just come up with a number now, even if it's modest, and we can address it and always increase it or do it again, or
Yes.
Like what Nate's saying is, let's set a little precedent here. Others will more likely give. And it doesn't have to be a huge number, because we can always address it again next week or 2 weeks or a month from now and always give more after you have that conversation. I don't want to say
$1,000
but a modest, start at least would be appropriate, maybe.
Yeah.
Do we know how many people are utilizing the food co-op in Sister Bay?
Are you talking about Winnie over at?
Adam's group.
Oh, no. I
a whole lot better.
He's feeding between 15 and 20,000 people a week.
That's what I thought he said at the meeting, yeah.
Yeah, it was a large number, but you didn't specify Sister Bay as a whole, just Northern Door.
I do know that when they've had extra meals left over in Northern Door, they've been giving them away in Sister Bay. I do know that much. I don't know how many meals that is, but it matters what they're doing in Sister Bay, but I think it's not really a basis for what we give, just because it's, this is a big effort we're in right now.
No, I was just curious if we knew a number. And did we hear anything from Chris Heck on what it is that the coalition could use? Do we know what their needs are, or what kind of support they're looking for?
I have not heard from Chris directly. I was hoping to have that conversation with him tonight.
Yeah.
At this meeting. So that's something we'll have to check with him on.
Yeah, we can talk to Chris and we can talk to Adam, and I think that they'll give us a better understanding of what they need. But I do believe that his concern was overhead, just making sure that they could pay the bills in the meantime, and all the refrigeration units that they have running now.
In the food costs, they need money to buy food is what they need. They need money to buy food to be able to have the meals. They're getting volunteers. Most of the stuff is being, donated, but they're only getting subsidized for some of the meals. I think only maybe children's meals. So over 2/3 or more of the meals, they're not getting any kind of government assistance on. So he said flat out, they need money for food to make meals. I mean,
How much could we reasonably give? That's not a huge amount. I mean, is $2,500 possible without really messing up the budget?
Yes, $2,500 is definitely possible without messing up the budget. We had a pretty healthy fund balance at the end of 2019, and we are curtailing pretty much any kind of spending wherever we can right now. So, because we don't know the impacts of this coronavirus. I don't know, my biggest concern right now is I don't know what's going to happen with room taxes and how big of an impact that's going to have on our budget overall, because that funds our debt service right now. So, but if we're talking about $2,000, $2,500, I really do think that's doable.
Yeah. So
I think we should do that today.
Okay, so you guys give us the approval. We'll
Okay, wait. In order to do this, what we would need is a formal motion. And then because it involves money, we would have to do a roll call vote. Just
I'd like to make a comment on that, Dave, before we do a motion, and I would suggest, and I would like comments from anyone as to, as part of this, we give the money now, but could we also have Bo contact the other village administrators and town administrators from the other communities in Northern Door, so that Bo could reach out to them and let them know, you might not be aware of it, but we had Adam from the meal service at one of our meetings. We have now given them money and they need donations if you'd like to join us.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to do that.
I'd like to make that motion that we authorize staff to make a donation of $2,500 to Adam's organization, whatever exact name that is.
I'll second that.
So I have a question about the motion. Do you want to include, and Tasha, we need your input on this also, do you want to include a similar amount for the Fire Chief Coalition?
I think that's a good idea.
I agree. I agree.
So,
I think we'll just have to reevaluate. Sorry, go ahead. I think we'll have to reevaluate the spending as the year goes, and I'll look. I mean, that right now this is going to come out of the general funds unassigned fund balance. So $5,000 isn't going to move the needle a whole lot. So I don't have a problem with that.
Let's just keep track moving forward.
Okay.
I have one more comment.
Please.
Even though Miles stated that they were trying to get a payroll loan, I think when you and I talked about this originally, Dave, that I think the job that they are doing has been so incredible and such a lifeline to a lot of people in the community about what's really happening locally, whether it's, Sister Bay or the county as a whole. And the extraordinary effort that they are all going through. If the Pulse gets the payroll loan, I think that's great. And if they can pay their staff out of that, I think that's wonderful. But that was not my intent about possibly giving them some money also for their exceptional service to the community. I really do believe that they have gone above and beyond what other newspapers maybe would have done, and their website is an incredible source of information. And I don't know, that's how I feel, Miles. I'd really like to give you guys something also, just to show the appreciation and how valuable your writing and the paper has been to this county.
I agree with you, Denise, but I'd really like that to be a separate motion because I will recuse myself on that for anything with a Pulse.
Okay, but I want to make mention that I think we need to be careful if we single out a media organization and give them funds. When we were talking about this, I was relating it more to helping with cash flow at their business. So for instance, if we do $10,000 worth of advertising there in a year, could we advance $5,000 towards that advertising so they had cash now, and we would get our advertising later in the year when we need to use it? And I was thinking more along those lines, and I think that's more palatable than just giving a donation to a media organization. No, no insult intended, Miles, but you understand what I'm saying?
No, I
agree
with that. We'd be riding a fine line.
Yeah, I absolutely understand. And first of all, I thank you for saying that, Denise, and to everyone who's had that feedback. It's, everyone's going through a lot right now with their businesses, with their personal lives. And so a lot of people are working really hard. I do think the food co-op should obviously be the priority. And I would agree with this. And I think versus a cash donation or something. I mean, a village can always take out an ad to support their citizens or anything of that matter, or do that advance. But like I said, I think we're pretty confident in in our work with the bank. And, you know, if that doesn't come through, I might, maybe I'd come back on my knees to you guys, but I just appreciate that feedback more than anything. And thanks for throwing that offer out there. But I think right now there's other people to take care of.
Thanks, Miles.
Okay. All right, so I just want to make sure what our motion is,
Okay, can I read it back?
please.
Okay, a motion is made by Bell, seconded by Baker, that the village board authorizes the donation of $2,500 to the Door County Meals Cooperative as well as the Door County Emergency Support Coalition.
I actually seconded it, Janelle, I think,
Oh, I'm sorry.
just so it's accurate.
Okay,
Okay, does anybody have any questions or other comments about that motion? If not, we'll roll call vote.
okay, so we've got Lino,
Yes.
Berto,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Duffy,
Yes.
Bell,
Yes.
Kadanko,
Yes.
and Zashki.
Yes.
Okay, that is passed, obviously. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Dave, can I just say one thing about the food pantries?
Sure.
I've been working with them and, you know, whatever we got to do, we'll try to help out as much as we can in that. So, of course, now it's still, there's a little struggle getting enough food and all that, you know, but I've been in touch with Heidi at one of the food pantries and Winnie, and I know Heidi at one of the food pantries, we're going to help them out also too. And we got a bunch of hams that we're going to give to them so people can pick up hams and all that. So the food pantries, I think, are in okay shape right now yet, but I mean, down the road, there's going to probably be a big need for that.
Okay, well, great. Thank you, Jay. Okay, moving to our next item, discussion regarding the effects the CDC guidelines with respect to COVID-19 pandemic, as well as state and federal regulations regarding COVID-19 will have on the operation of Villages Marina. Consider a motion for action if necessary.
Okay, so I'm gonna slide over here. Yeah, so the reason we have this on the agenda, we talked with Amy over at the marina, and it's, you know, April 7th right now, but May 1 is going to be coming around the corner pretty quickly. So I just wanted to start having this discussion now, so that when we get closer to May, we can make, you know, better call. And Amy is on the line. I see that too. So if I don't get any of this right, Amy, just jump in. But Amy sent me an email, and I'd be happy to pass it along to all the board members. But just some things to consider, that trying to figure out if the marina is going to be open or closed, that we could, you know, kind of think about the following, so that our marina could limit business to seasonal tenants only, so no transient, limiting the number of people allowed in the office at one time, practicing social distancing at all times, keeping staff off of boats, so no pump outs, keeping general public off the docks to discourage groups of people meeting, only allow boat owners on the docks, limiting the number of people in restrooms at one time, having noted that some marinas are closing their offices altogether and just having a singular staff member monitoring the phones and the radio. So boat owners would have to fend for themselves without assistance from staff on the marina. And just some other notes that Amy had is some marinas that offer fuel and repairs, they're the ones that are classified as essential. But if you don't offer those, then the marina is considered non-essential. So just some things to think about as we move forward. And I know we have a few more meetings before May 1 comes around, but you know, these discussions will have to be had for one of our major assets in the village.
So Louise, I'm going to ask you to pipe in if you would, because you and I had some conversation and you had some conversation at the state level with marinas.
Yeah, you know what, we have a weekly coordinators meeting, and we were all trying to figure out whether campgrounds, and we're talking about marinas were essential or not. So there was somebody that the DCEDC works with at the WEDC. So I called her and emailed her a bunch of times, finally talked to her. So she suggested I look at the infrastructure portion of Evers Safer at Home order. Marinas are in that portion of the order. And it states, and so marinas are in there. I didn't see anything about essential versus non-essential based on whether they do fuel, have fuel or repairs. So one thing I will say is that, so for instance, we all saw that when questioned, the Airbnb, or I should say the rental properties went from non-essential to essential, right? So I said to her, look, we want to just get some clarification because we don't want to have happen what happened with the rentals. So she mentioned that their attorney was looking at the most common clarifications they're getting asked about, and that the state was intending to send out a list of clarifications. So whether or not marinas or campgrounds would be part of that would be driven by how many people had asked. That was a week ago, and we haven't heard anything. So I don't know if we're going to get further clarification or not. Back to marinas. She said, look at the infrastructure portion. I did. And I said, the village owns our marina. She said, if you own it and the village owns it, you can do whatever you want with it. Her words. So I can give you the contact at the WEDC if you want, Bo.
Yeah.
Great gal. Great gal. I mean, I emailed her. I had to email her a couple of different times and call her, but I tracked her down. She called me back. Nice person. She couldn't and wouldn't. She said to me, I'm not going to tell you about campgrounds. I'm not going to put anything in writing to you. And she said, my suggestion to you would be to go to the DNR's website and see what they're doing with their campgrounds. And all their campgrounds are closed. But so that's a whole different conversation, but she wouldn't give me any information and not go on the record at all with campgrounds. Okay. So I'll shoot her information over to you.
Okay, thank you.
And I think, we do have some time to consider this. Obviously, we don't need to make any action, but just to have this thought in our head, because, 2 weeks from now, we're going to be having to make that call as people put in their boats in May 1.
Well, one of the, Bo, I'll mention on your list of things, I talked to Jay Shomo today, who runs Alibi, and he basically said he expects nobody to use their bathrooms and everybody to be using their own bathrooms, and the pump outs increased. So as much as we may want to avoid pump outs for going near other people's boats, it might actually be safer than the public using the bathrooms, so to speak, because a lot of these boats have bathrooms on them. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's right or wrong. It's just it was his thought on it. They're also closing their office. There's a lot we can do with our reservation software, taking credit cards with iPads, if we would allow transient. I don't have an opinion either way. He just had some interesting ideas, as they're going forward with this, because it's kind of figuring out as you go. So anyway, just some added thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, Chad, I think that's good. My only concern with doing more on the pump outs is just the increased liability that we would have as, having our staff members on the boats. That's kind of what I'm hoping to avoid.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be a fair idea to ask the Marina Committee that has expertise in this arena to discuss this and then come back to this board with some thoughts and recommendations?
So that's the next thing is if we can, obviously we've had no committees or commissions meeting except for board and plan. So if you guys would allow the Marina Committee to meet, we can do a Zoom meeting to have those discussions if approved.
And I was going to suggest that, Pat. We just hadn't got that far yet. We wanted to bring this up. We didn't expect any decisions to be made tonight. Correct. It was to have this general conversation, talk to you, see what you want to do with the Marina Committee, and then look at next week and the week after when we have time to discuss it further.
Yeah.
But we just wanted everybody to have the information, be aware of it's an issue we're going to have to confront in the next couple of weeks.
Yep.
Okay.
So then,
I think it would be a good idea to have a meeting. I mean, there's other things. We've got other ongoing projects. There's damage to the boathouse. We need to get something prepared so that more damage doesn't happen. I mean, Marina Committee needs to talk. Stuff needs to happen.
Okay, then we should probably have a
We'll have
Marina
a,
Committee.
we'll have a Marina Committee.
So then, Bo, all the stuff you kind of read off as a laundry list, that is not stuff that's been decided, that's suggestions or thoughts of yours?
Those are just general notes.
What?
Those are just general notes, things to think about and consider moving forward. Those weren't decisions made.
Okay, so my question then would be, if the Marina Committee comes back to you or doesn't come back to you, or you as the village administrator decide to emphasize those things you read off, such as limiting business to seasonal slips only, no staff on boats, no general public on docks, just boat owners, does that mean you're not going to let the boat rental place operate out of the marina?
That's something that
Let
has
the
to
Marina
be
Committee have their meeting.
that'll have to be discussed at the Marina Committee.
Rob, I don't think anything's being decided. It's just more of stuff that we need to really start thinking about and be prepared for. You know, one thing Jay did mention, he's like, we're planning on business as normal. We know it's not going to be normal, but you have to still anticipate some level of normality. And then, you know, if you're not allowed to open, or you're not allowed to have transients, or you decide not to have transients, it's a lot easier to make a decision not to do something at any point, but still be prepared to do it. And I'm not speaking that I have an opinion on it, just, you know, none of us have any concrete decisions that we can make at this moment. We just have to start thinking about it.
Yeah, the whole objective is to plan it
one way or the other.
Is this important enough that we would just make this whole topic part of the agenda of our next Tuesday meeting like this, and invite other committee members from the Marina Committee to come and partake in it?
I was hoping that we could just have a separate Marina Committee where they can discuss and make decisions, and then make recommendations to the board, so that once a decision's made on the Marina Committee level, we can pass it on to our board.
Now, that'll be a virtual meeting, right?
Correct.
Yes.
And I think usually it's the second Tuesday at 4 o'clock, that if we could schedule it for next Tuesday at 4 o'clock, maybe we'd have information to share with the meeting, that if you want to put it as an agenda item for discussion, we could talk about it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Good idea.
Perfect.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
I have one other thing. We have to go back up to item number 1, the COVID-19 discussion. There's something that we forgot to discuss. I didn't have it written down in front of me, and that is, we as a village probably need to think about what we're going to do with employees that are not working or are self-isolating. And I'm not talking about employees that we have directed to self-isolate, like at the sewer and water or parks that we said we were going to do. But going forward, we don't know what's going to happen employee-wise as far as work, if they're able to work at home or they're not able to work at home. And so we were talking about putting a policy together that was similar to what the county had put together. There was a special leave bank that was put together that an employee could draw on if they weren't able to work regular hours. And then that would feed into both the state and the national program that they have, so we could get reimbursed those dollars, and it would also ensure that the employees would continue to get paid if there comes a point in time where, for whatever reason, an employee can't work or perform his job because of what's going on with the COVID-19. So I know Bo was looking into it. I don't know if he got to talk with Kelly or not.
Not yet, no.
Okay. But the county had put together a pretty elaborate but simple plan for this. And so I had asked Bo to take a look at that and talk with Kelly Hendy in Human Resources at the county to get an idea of what the county was doing, to see if we could potentially adopt that or adopt something similar at the village level.
So just to jump in off of that, I appreciate you bringing that up. That needed to get discussed. So since our discussions, I've put together a draft policy. Obviously, it wasn't ready to be thrown onto the agenda tonight, so that should be up next weekend or next week. But it would essentially take a lot of the special bank that the county did and just fine tune it to what the village has. And then that way we have a policy in place so that we can get some federal reimbursement, because we're just concerned that if we don't have a policy in place that we could miss out on that. And that's very important for us.
Yes, it is. The federal reimbursement and the state pool is based on having a policy in place that would cover your employees in situations like this, specific to the COVID-19 piece. So that's why we were talking about and bringing it up. It'll be on the agenda again next week. We will get a copy of it to you. Obviously, we can discuss it in a little bit more detail next week moving forward. I don't think we have something like this imminent. It's not like going to happen this week. We have somebody in that position, but we may very well in the near future. So we're just trying to stay ahead of it.
Dave, as long as we're back on agenda item number 1,
Sure.
I know this is a while off, but has there been conversation down at the county about the reoccurrence in the fall of COVID-19?
There has been some discussion, I'll call it minimal discussion, at public health, both locally and at the state level. They're trying to determine, they're thinking that how we flatten the curve will determine what's going to happen in the fall and later. And it really comes back to, they keep coming back to the testing, but they're talking about testing for antibodies, not whether you're positive or not now, or you're sick now, but whether you had it in the past and didn't know it. And I think that's what most of the states are trying to do, is build reliance on that kind of testing to tell everybody how widespread it was and how bad it was, because that'll determine what the possibilities are for people catching it on a second wave or later on. We may be surprised and find out 70% of the population had it. Most people didn't even know it, and that would be a pleasant surprise. On the other hand, you may find out that 5% of the population had it, and yeah, you may be real susceptible to a second wave. But my understanding is they're trying to, until more testing is done, both on active cases, but mostly on the antibodies, to see whether or not you had been exposed and whether or not you had immunity to or not, would really determine what would happen second wave-wise prior to any vaccine coming up.
Because the 1918, the Spanish flu, it wasn't the initial,
right,
the spring that killed the bulk of the 50 million people. It was the fall and winter that was the second wave. And so I know it's a long time off, and we're trying to deal with what we have on our plates now. And I think everybody is trying to be very hopeful, and the curve is flattened, which it's kind of looking pretty good right now for our peak date and the numbers. But I don't want to lose sight of, we could be here back in the same ballgame, sooner than what we realize. And just want to make sure that we get the information, I guess, from public health in the state, that the county knows pertaining to what they're expecting in the fall.
Yep. And I would remind everybody that the Spanish flu in 1918 was 1919, 1920, and 1921. It lasted for 3.5 years.
Oh.
Way to do that to Denise, Dave. Good job.
Well, if you don't get a good out of her once in a while.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a very valid point, though. There is some discussion, but at the moment, and it really comes back to, can you find out who had it and who didn't have it? Because that'll determine how bad a second wave would be.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Anything else on the COVID-19 while we're back on that subject? If not, that closes our agenda for the evening. A motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Jay and Miles, I'd like to thank you too for your guys' work in the Pulse and the PIG. It's huge to have two businesses in the community be such leaders. So thank you both, and to all your staff, pass that on from all of us. As Denise said, it's very helpful during these times. So keep it up.
Absolutely. Thank you again,
Stay
everybody.
safe, everybody.
We are closed.